An hour of television can change everything.
3 women in a whippet. Wouldn't have seen that in a BBC studio when I started.
Well, I think the interview did so much. I think it was the catalyst to so many things that happened beyond it that are really, really important, and holding people with that level of status to account. They have to be accountable, you know, and it's very rare that you would get that level of access to someone like that. And seeing the women who brought that interview to our screens and their story and their, you know, their quest to get it done, sort of ping-ponging between the BBC and the royal family, how hard that is, how many red lines there were, how male it was often. It's kind of, they need this day in the sun because what they did was truly remarkable and, you know, a big part of history. So, yeah, I think that's what I loved about it, and that's where my sort of bite for the film came. Well, she is a fascinating character, so it's like, it's a gift as an actor because she's, you know, the story in and of itself is amazing. How she made that interview happen is amazing. But she as a person is kind of, you know, there are so many things to choose from as an actor. She's unlike anyone I've ever met. She is, she's incredibly smart, goes without saying, very high energy, has this sort of air of icon about her, and she loves the negotiation. So she's fascinating, really. She's so ballsy.
The allegations surrounding Jeffrey Epstein include his friend Prince Andrew.
Sam, let's start pushing the palace. I want it for us.
You're chasing a story that we're never going to get.
This is the work.
Well, look, I mean, on the one hand, it's similar to any time you take on an historical character, I think, just in terms of the deep dive that you might do. And fortunately, with someone like Emily, who's so much in the public eye, there's a lot of footage out there that you get to watch, whether or not you have face-to-face time with them. So I was very lucky in that regard, and it was a lot of, you know, it was a lot of that. It was listening and watching and observing mannerisms, and a little bit more daunting than playing somebody who is deceased. But yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan for a while, so it was a joy to step into her shoes. So the interview itself is about 50 minutes long. Our version of it is about 10 minutes long. So it was asking somebody to turn the audio element of it into a repeated MP3, and also the visual into you know, a smaller video file, and just, you know, basically watching and listening on a loop, paying attention to mannerisms, when she looked up, when she, you know, it was a drag at one point when I saw the actual film. Because of how many times she looks down at her notes, it looks like I might be looking at my lines. I'm like, no, I didn't. They were all in here. I wasn't reading my lines.
That makes
yeah,
sense. She looks down a lot.
Yeah.
The question is, why you?
With respect, you know how people see you.
Spell it out.
Brandy, Andy.
With respect.
Well, it's, you know, it's this question of sympathy versus empathy, you know, and empathy is very interesting. Like the way a camera works is a grey scale. It looks at either a bright scene or a black scene and it sees grey. And that's a good way of getting all the detail, you know. And you try to do that, like to be able to really try to see something from someone's perspective, what they would be thinking, what the truth they're telling themselves about their moment, their reasons for being the way they are, so that you can represent them fully. Not make them look good, not make them look bad, but just try to be truthful. And it's very tempting sometimes to slant it one way or another, because you can be criticised for going too far in either direction, especially playing someone like that.
There are photographs which aren't especially helpful at all, and a speech she gives for Pitch at Palace, a sort of wide shot of a speech, you know, it's really unhelpful. So I spoke to Sam McAlister, and because she knows her,
Yeah, she
she's
was
the only
around.
person, she was around. And so that was great to be able to talk to her about Amanda, but really I was in the much more luxurious position of sort of creating that person. And I do think And I totally believe that she thought that it would be a really positive thing for Andrew to do this interview. I think she wanted everyone to see him through her eyes, really. They were great friends, and she believed in him completely.
You have a problem that won't go away.
We're looking at options. But there is a red line.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that really is the raison d'etre. The reason for this movie is that, basically the interview itself, of course, has been seen so many times, but it's 5% of the tale. And anyone who works in journalism is often asked, what do you do? How does this stuff happen? How did this interview happen? And here in Scoop, what we're trying to do is to give you the answer to that question, because the 95% of the work that goes on prior to a brilliant presenter like Emily sitting down and doing an interview like this is really the story of everyday journalism in this country and around the world. So you accompany me, well, Billie Piper, if you like, in the adventure, the experience, the highs and the lows of bringing something like this to the public. And that's the story of, most people in journalism and indeed in most jobs.
It was challenging to do, and it's scary to do, and sometimes you do jobs because they're scary, and this was one of those. It was an interview that everybody knows really well, and not just in terms of the lines that Andrew says, the answers to the questions, but also the room, the framing, the camera work, all of those things were really well known, and so yeah, you try to find, I suppose, a way that the actors can inhabit those characters, but do so in a way that feels familiar to people who know the real version of the story, but also doesn't turn into an impersonation and become just sort of mimicry. And so all of those things are, that's our job. We love it. We spend lots of time talking about it. We rebuilt the room that the interview took place in. We redid the carpet. We matched all of the BBC had 6 cameras, digital cameras filming. We did all of those. So we really worked hard to make it match the interview that everyone had seen, so that when in the future, when both things are alongside each other, they look similar. And I think actually in one of the newspapers they had one of our shots of the interview and the real interview, and I think they miscaptioned them.
They did. It happened in 2 actually.
Yeah, and so they gave us.
That's how good it was.
Yeah. I think we did do a lot of research, and we do a lot of reading around it, and have the people that we know inside that world that we talk to, and you try to with factual drama, you try to make it as rooted in reality as possible. But I think what drama can do, which is the exciting thing about it, as distinct to documentary, and there've been some wonderful documentaries on this subject already, but I think drama can put you into people's heads, and it can give you the emotional experience and the emotional perspective and the emotional insight of those characters. And so yeah, those moments when Andrew's on his own are important, because he, I guess, goes on a journey through the film, and I think right at the end you get the sense that he's understood really for the first time the sequence of events that he's set in motion, and that's an important part of the experience of watching the film.
Everything's changed. The FBI are raiding Epstein's home. You can't stay silent.
I mean, I literally screamed when I heard that she'd accepted the part, because I felt that she would be someone who would be able to capture my essence, that the range between the dark moments, the hard work, the seriousness, but also the levity and bringing up a child, which she's experienced, and her laugh, which, like mine, can fill an ocean. So she was very generous with her time. She spent a lot of time with me. She hadn't played a real person before. I don't know why I'm putting that. And so really she spent the time and put in the effort to get to know the physical aspects, obviously the incredible costume and makeup and the walk, which she kindly practiced. A friend of mine filmed it and sent it to her, but also who I am, my essence, in terms of my values, my love for martinis, of course, but my love for my mother and my son, what it's like bringing up a kid on your own, working in a high-pressure environment, the relentless nature of the work I was doing, my passion for it, my love of it, my energy for most of the day, and then flopping on the sofa watching Netflix at night. So I think she encapsulated all those things through the generosity of the time she spent with me and the brilliance of her acting and her performance. So You know, I cried when I saw her.